Can I really tell the difference between hearing God's voice and my own thoughts? That's a question I've grappled with for years. As I walk my spiritual journey, I've come to realize just how crucial it is to discern between God's voice and my inner monologue. Being able to hear God's voice clearly can guide us through life's challenges, offer us comfort in times of need, and direct us towards our purpose. But how do we know when it's really God's voice we're hearing? Many of us struggle with this very question. We've all had those moments where we're unsure if it's God speaking to us or just our own thoughts and desires. This confusion can lead to frustration, doubt, and a sense of disconnection from our faith. I've been there too, questioning whether a decision or thought was guided by a higher power or my own intuition. It's a common struggle that can make our spiritual journey feel more complicated than it needs to be. The truth is, our inner monologue can be loud and persuasive. It's made up of our thoughts, feelings, and experiences, all jumbled together. Sometimes it can be hard to distinguish between what's coming from within us and what's coming from a divine source. This confusion can cause us to question our faith and our ability to hear God's voice. For instance, I've often found myself wondering if a particular thought or desire was truly from God or just my own wishful thinking. It's disheartening when we're unsure if we're following divine guidance or just our own inclinations. This uncertainty can slow down our spiritual growth and make us feel like we're not living up to our potential. Exploring the characteristics of God's voice versus our inner dialogue has been incredibly enlightening for me. Generally, God's voice is described as gentle, peaceful, and often contrary to our natural inclinations. It's not a voice that condemns or brings fear, but rather one that encourages, guides, and brings peace. On the other hand, our inner monologue can be frantic, self-centered, and sometimes downright critical. One personal anecdote that stands out was when I was considering a significant life change. My inner voice was screaming with doubts and fears. But as I took time to pray and reflect, I sensed a gentle nudge towards taking the leap. This nudge was accompanied by a sense of peace that I couldn't ignore. Looking back, I realized that was God's voice guiding me through the uncertainty. So the main insight or turning point in discerning God's voice came from learning to quiet my mind and listen deeply. For me, the game changer was practicing silence and meditation. In the stillness, I began to recognize a voice that wasn't my own, a voice that brought clarity, peace, and direction. This wasn't something I learned overnight, but through consistent practice. I became more attuned to what I now understand as God's guidance. The key takeaway here is that discerning between God's voice and our inner monologue is a skill that can be developed. It takes practice, patience, and persistence, but it's worth it. By learning to quiet our minds and listen deeply, we can begin to hear God's voice more clearly. If you've had any experiences with discerning God's voice, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below.